Now, to discuss this, I'm joined from Johannesburg by Zanele Lwana. She's the Deputy President of the Black First Land First Party. And in Cape Town is Thomas Walters. He's the Democratic Alliance's Shadow Deputy Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform. And completing our panel is Professor Ruth Hall at the University of Western Cape. Thank you all for joining us. Now, I want to ask, first of all, to start with you, Zanele. Now, a land expropriation law was passed 2 years ago. So why isn't that good enough? Why do we need a constitutional change now?
Greetings to you and to your viewers as well. At the Lands Claim Court, which is situated in South Africa, we have not had a single case where black people who were colonized and dispossessed for their land had actually succeeded in getting their land back without compensating the white minority, which brutally and violently dispossessed the black majority in this country. The Constitution in its current form legalizes land theft on the part of white people who invaded our country and dispossessed our people and enslaved us and oppressed us as the black majority. So the Constitution, as we speak right now, does not respond to the demand of black people that the country, and in particular the land that we live in, must be brought back to the rightful owners. The Constitution, in fact, and in particular people like Advocate Ngugaitobi and the former Chief Justice, which is Mr. Musaneke, have talked a lot about equitable compensation on the part of the victims, which happen to be black people. But if we dig deeper into the issue, this compensation that people are talking about is always translated to the market value of the land. And our position as Black First Land First is that a crime had been committed, and the victims of this crime are black people who were evicted, who were brutalized, and who were killed from their homeland and from the land of their ancestors. So the perpetrators, which still remains the white settler minority, cannot then turn around and demand for the compensation of the land while the land was taken without paying for a cent from its rightful owners, and that is black people. So we are calling, in fact, for the total removal of Section 25. And one of the demands that we are making as Black First Land First is that the land occupation in this country must not be treated as an illegal action, and that farm evictions in particular, as we have seen, that our people have been brutalized and killed in farms that are owned by the white settler minority. No evictions must happen, but in particular, the country in itself and the land in particular must be regarded as stolen property, and property that must be returned to the hands of black people.
Okay. Zanele, thank you very much for that point of view. Now, I want to bring in Ruth Hall, and you look very closely at land policy and rights. And we just heard there from Zanele saying that the Constitution legalizes land theft. Very strong words there. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that what Zanele is saying is absolutely true, which is that colonialism and apartheid constituted land theft in South Africa. And the question is now, what do we as a society do about that? And what we have created in our Constitution is actually a system of saying that there should be property rights for both the propertied and the propertyless. And that actually the interests of those who don't have property, those who were dispossessed, should take priority over those who own private property. And the reality is that we have a government that hasn't implemented that. So The difference between Zanele's point of view and mine is not about the history. We agree about the history. The question is it the problem that our government, since 1996, when we had a new constitution, is it the problem that our government has not implemented those laws? Mm-hmm. And it was meant to make sure that people who had claims to land got their land back. And it has not been able to give effect to that.
So surely, surely that should be the place where we fix things, the government fixes things first there.
Well, this is the debate right now. And I think that what's happening in South Africa is now a very deeply racialized and polarized situation where a lot of white people are saying, defend the Constitution, defend our private property rights. And a lot of black people are saying, change the Constitution and let us just take back the land. But in between, what we need to hear from the ruling party, from the ANC, is a clear story of what is the government planning to do? So South Africa is deeply divided on this issue of land right now, but there are lots of opportunities to get this right, even within the framework of our existing constitution, which says that you can expropriate land in the interests of making good on what was done wrong in the past.
Okay.
So we actually have a legal framework to set this right.
Okay, so there is a legal framework as it stands right now to make things right. Thomas Waters, you've been listening to these 2 points of view. What's yours?
Well, look, I think the key problem that my political party, that's the main opposition party in South Africa, has, is that currently the thrust is to amend the constitution for the state to actually have more rights over land. And our party position is we actually want individuals to own property. We want more black South Africans to own property. We don't believe land reform is situated by taking land rights away from citizens and taking it towards the state. In fact, Section 25 of the Constitution is meant to prevent exactly that arbitrary seizure of land by the state. That is, in fact, one of the pillars on which apartheid in South Africa was built on, is the state able to simply trample on the rights of individuals. So our party is there to defend the individual property rights of people. We feel individual property rights must be extended to as many South Africans as possible, and to also, in the process, deal with the legacy of dispossession that we had in South Africa in the past.
Okay, and I want to go back to you, Zanele. From far away, this can sound like it is Zimbabwe once again. Why or why not is this Zimbabwe all over again?
I think it's very important to put the utmost importance on the relevancy of history and the brutality and the violence that black people in this country had been able to endure. The fact of the matter is that black people are poor, they are dispossessed, they are slaves in their motherland in South Africa, particularly of colonization, because of colonization, and because of land theft, and because of institutionalized discrimination and apartheid as legislated as early as 1948 in this country. And that the 1994 negotiation process in South Africa was not able to bring justice in terms of black people as victims of oppression and apartheid in this country. So if we are to build an equal society, a true country, a just society that respects everyone in South Africa, we must come to terms with the injustices that have been committed on the part of black people.
Okay.
And the principal and the main injustice that had been committed on black people is their dispossession, is their oppression, is their enslavement in their mother country. And these had been materialized by the action of land theft. So land must be brought back to the black majority, and we must have conversation on how this land can be used to benefit first and foremost the black majority and whoever wants to live in this country on terms dictated to by black people. So this is in no way trying to eliminate everyone, but there is no way that we can say South Africa is first and foremost a black country, but we become junior partners in terms of defining the destiny.
Zanele, I just want to
country.
Jump in because
this is a historical moment that needs to be addressed, and we cannot shy away on how benefit and advantage in South Africa has been defined on racial lines for a very long time.
Zanele, but my question was actually about your neighboring Zimbabwe. We saw what happened there with land expropriation. My question is that going to happen as well? Could that happen in South Africa, or are we looking at this in a completely different way? Because what happened there was a disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we are having this conversation, we must also keep on our minds that we are a country and we are third world nations that find themselves embedded in what is global imperialism, and countries that belong to the West dictating terms on how Africans should live in their own continent. But I think most importantly, you know, in South Africa, the problem that we have a problem of food security, where half of the population already lives in abject poverty. And we have one of the thriving agricultural sectors in this country. So the agricultural sector that is in white hands at this point produces food, but not to feed the nation, but to import food outside the country. And as a result, the black majority, who are the rightful owners of the country, go to sleep on an empty stomach. So obviously, if we push for land expropriation without compensation, because we belong in a world that we do not rule as black people, we are going to be victimized, and we are going to get sanctioned, and we are going to get attacked on a brave stance that we are taking. But the truth of the matter,
Zanele,
this is the only solution if we are to regain our dignity as black people.
Thank you, Zanele. I want to bring in Ruth. I see you nodding there vigorously to everything Zanele is saying. Why?
Well, actually, I agree with a lot of what Zanele is saying, which is her analysis of the history of colonialism, apartheid, what it means, the reality that we live in a society that produces a lot of food, and yet most people are food insecure. I mean, we live in a crazily unequal society.
Thomas Waters, we have a minute left. I want to give you the last word. My question really on Zimbabwe hasn't really been answered. Are we going to see another Zimbabwe in South Africa?
Look, I don't believe I can see into the future. I most certainly think that Zimbabwe was an economic disaster. 1/3 of Zimbabweans left Zimbabwe because of the failure of the land reform process there. I agree, actually, with Professor Hall. The fact is that we need to put policies in place that can actually take us towards a successful free market. Nobody's saying that, you know, simply looking at things as it is going to fix the future for South Africa. Government needs to come up with powerful policies that can deal with the legacy that we sit with, make sure that we secure the land rights of all South Africans. A market economy is not based on the property rights of a few. It means that all the property rights of all South Africans needs to be dealt with. The real problem is that government failed to put proper policies in place. I don't believe the Constitution is the problem. It's a government that has failed and needs to be replaced by a government that can actually implement this and make it happen.
So you blame the government, not the Constitution. We'll have to leave it there. I'm afraid we've run out of time. Thank you to all three of you, Zanele, Lwana, Ruth Hall and Thomas Waters. Thank you to all three of you for speaking to us on The Newsmakers. Thank you.